Hello, and welcome to the next in the Effective Writing Center series of workshops. I'm Dan Gallagher, Director of the UWC. Today's workshop is titled Put More Power in Your Prose, Top 10 Ways to Muscle Up Your Sentences, and is being presented by Anna Dumonchel and Sue. Anna Dumonchel is a lead writing advisor at the UWC and has worked at the Writing Center in various functions, including writing advisor, writing fellow, and database coordinator. She has a BA in anthropology from the University of Maryland, College Park. Anna finds her work at the UWC rewarding because it combines her love of writing with her passion for teaching. She sincerely enjoys helping students become more confident writers. Suzanne Hill has a master's degree in professional writing. She has been a writing advisor with the Effective Writing Center for 4 years. She also teaches English composition at Towson University and literary analysis at Carroll Community College. To ask a question during the broadcast, please use the chat feature in YouTube below the viewing window. This workshop, like all our workshops, will be archived for future viewing in the Effective Writing Center's Google Plus community and on our YouTube page. And now, let's begin tonight's workshop. Anna?
Thanks, Dan. According to Mark Twain, writing is easy. All you have to do is cross out the wrong words. While Mr. Twain's assessment of the writing process may have been tongue-in-cheek, he did make a good point. Carefully crafting your sentences is an important skill to hone. But how do you know which are the right words? Tonight we'll discuss 10 strategies that you can use to muscle up your writing, transforming weak and flabby prose to strong sentences that really pack a punch. What are the characteristics that make writing effective? Powerful writing is simple and to the point. It is focused, concise, and accurate. It is also vivid and descriptive. You want your reader to feel compelled to continue reading. Now, I'll hand things over to my colleague Suzanne, who will get us started in discussing our 10 strategies for achieving powerful writing. Suzanne, take it away.
Thank you, Anna. So before you start a writing project, you need to know what you're going to say, and you need to know your audience. Once you know the point you want to make, use effective words to get your point across. Today, listeners tend to be short on free time, and they want you to get your point across clearly. They want to know why you are writing. If you're having trouble finding the right word, try speaking your message out loud to yourself, or try explaining it to a friend or sending it to them in an email. A thesaurus will give you helpful synonyms. Sometimes you have a good idea of the word you want, it's on the tip of your tongue, but you can't remember it. Looking through a list of synonyms can be very helpful. This way you can find a precise word with the connotation and meaning you are looking for. For example, I looked up synonyms for concise. I found these words: pithy, succinct, and terse. Each of these words is a good choice. Each one means something slightly different. Depending on my writing project, one of these might be the perfect choice. Visiting the thesaurus helped me find these words I might not have thought of otherwise. A reverse lookup dictionary lets you put in a phrase or a definition of a word. It will give you suggestions for the word you're looking for. For example, I wrote helpful PowerPoint presentation, and it suggested the word assistance. Now for an example. In our example, the message is too exuberant. Society teaches young girls that beauty is their most important quality. In order to prevent eating disorders and other health problems, we must change society. This is unrealistic. Honestly, does the writer mean that we should try to change society? Here's a revision. Popular media, like magazines and movies, show girls that beauty is their most important quality. To prevent eating disorders and other health problems, we should change the images and role models girls are offered. The point is, we should work on the images young girls are shown, because the message we are sending young girls is unrealistic. The revision is better. So in your own writing, think, is the message I'm sending correct and realistic? Am I using the right words? If you're not sure, try looking them up. You want to sound like you know what you are talking about. You want people to take your writing seriously. You want to convey the right message. Tip number 2, place information for emphasis. If you can control the emphasis in a sentence, your writing will be more clear and more persuasive. You can use the position of words or phrases in a sentence to show varying degrees of emphasis. Often, words placed at the beginning of a sentence have the most emphasis. And words placed at the end of a sentence can also get attention because they are easily remembered, because they were most recently read. Here's an example. If you want to draw attention to a key fact or idea, put the word up front as an introductory phrase. So instead of "he emerged from the disaster unscathed remarkably," the revision would be "remarkably, he emerged from the disaster unscathed." Changing the placement of the word "remarkably" to the beginning puts emphasis on this adverb because the sentence opens with it. When the word is at the end of the sentence, it seems, as in the first example, it seems almost as an afterthought. Another example, death and taxes are the only things certain in life. Changing the main idea, death and taxes, to the end of the sentence places the emphasis on it. The only things certain in life are death and taxes. It adds a bit of drama by making the reader wait until the end to get the main idea. Tip number 3, avoid nominalizations. What is a nominalization? This happens when a writer turns a verb into a noun. It is said that nominalizations are like zombies. They are lifeless and deadening. Zombie nouns transform simple and straightforward prose into confusing writing. Take an adjective like predictable or a verb like proliferate. Add a suffix like ability or tion. Now you've created a new noun, predictability, proliferation. Argue becomes having an argument. Analyze becomes performing an analysis. Publish becomes putting out a publication. Are these impressive? No. Helen Sword says they suck the lifeblood from good adjectives, they cannibalize active verbs, they substitute abstract entities for good solid ideas. Here's a bad sentence. The proliferation of nominalizations in discursive formations may be an indication of a tendency toward pomposity and abstraction. Wow, there are 7 nominalizations here. When we reanimate these words back into lively words, we get writers who overload their sentences with nominalizations tend to sound pompous and abstract. Here are other examples to avoid. Consideration instead of consider. Recommendation instead of recommend. Collection instead of collect. Avoid nominalizations by using active verbs. Verbs give life and movement to your writing. Nominalizations tend to obscure the meaning of the sentence. There's no noun in the sentence performing the action. These sentences leave out the people that should be doing the action. This can be a helpful strategy if you want to see if you've been sneaking in nominalizations without realizing it. Count how many words in your paper end in the suffix tion. Take a look at each of them to make sure you aren't turning your verbs into nouns, thereby making your writing weaker. Here's an example. Generally, if you're given the option between a noun and a verb, take the verb. As we've done here with this example, Thomas gave an explanation about the project. The revision is Thomas explained the project. This is much more direct. You can also count how many words are in these sentences. The first sentence went from 7 words down to 4 words. Unnecessary words were eliminated, and the meaning was made more clear. Tip number 4, avoid expletives. Avoid overusing expletives at the beginnings of your sentences. Expletives include the phrases it is, it was, there is, there are, there was. When you start a sentence with it is or there are, you're not following the typical sentence structure that people expect of noun, verb. So your sentence does not have a clear subject. It's not clear who is doing the action of the sentence. It almost sounds as if you're starting the sentence with a stutter. Your sentence has been stripped of its vigor. If you want your sentences to be clearer and more direct, start with a strong subject instead. So every time you start a sentence with it, it's a problem? No, not necessarily. If you start a sentence with it and you've made it clear to what it refers in the previous sentence, you should be fine. Here's an example. It is the governor who signs and vetoes bills. You can see there's no clear subject at the opening of the sentence where we expect it. In the place where we would expect to see the subject, we see it is. So here I've revised the sentence as, the governor signs and vetoes bills. This is much more clear and less wordy. Tip 5, replace passive verbs. To be verbs are very important in writing. We often write I am or she is, and these phrases are essential to our writing. These are fine. But you want to avoid overusing to be verbs. Using to be verbs can sometimes mean you're writing in passive voice. This kind of writing is often used in legal documents where people want to hide or obscure meaning, or where they do not want to name an actor. But in legal writing, they're doing this on purpose, perhaps even to create confusion. The overuse of passive verbs leads to writing that lacks vigor and power. Thus, your writing can suffer. You want to choose stronger, more action-packed verbs instead. Not every use of to be is passive, though. You might say, Grandma was calling. This is not passive voice. This is simply past tense. How can you easily tell what is considered passive voice? You can use the zombie test. Rebecca Johnson, a professor of culture and ethics at USMC, had this advice. If you can add the phrase by zombies after the verb and the sentence still makes sense, it's passive voice. The sentence, every Friday he gets paid by zombies, makes grammatical sense. So the sentence, every Friday he gets paid, is passive voice. Who is doing the paying? We can't tell. But try this sentence with this test with the sentence, Grandma was calling. It would be, Grandma was calling by zombies. This does not make sense. So therefore, Grandma was calling is not passive voice. This is how the zombie test works. And it works for most cases to help you detect a passive voice sentence that you can turn into a more active voice sentence with a stronger verb. Here's an example. The weak sentence uses the passive verb was, as in, our mother was the driver of the bus. And revised, our mother drove the bus. In the revision, the better sentence now has a strong verb, drove. Now, Anna Dumenschel will tell you about more strategies.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'll be glad to walk through the next 5 strategies for putting power in your prose. First, let's talk about how to avoid redundant wording. Redundant or unnecessarily repetitive writing is a sure way to lose your writer's interest. A word or phrase is redundant when it repeats a point that you've just made. This type of unnecessary repetition distracts from your point and should be avoided. When writing, it is important to use only the words that are necessary to convey your point. It may be tempting to throw in extra words or phrases to lengthen your sentences, but straightforward and concise is the goal in many college-level writing assignments. It is also important to avoid repeated words and phrases. When you proofread a paper, be on the lookout for words that may repeat the same point. If you aren't sure whether certain phrases are redundant, underline them. Then try deleting those underlined words. If your point is still clearly conveyed to the reader, the words you deleted are unnecessary and can be removed. Replace wordy phrases with single words that make the same point. Why say, let's postpone this meeting until another time later on, when simply saying, let's postpone this meeting conveys the same message in fewer words. Avoid unnecessary synonyms. For instance, you don't need to say, the jobless teacher was unemployed, because jobless and unemployed are synonyms, meaning that they have the same definition, and you only need to use one of them. Here is an example of redundant wording. The reason the man went home is because he was tired. The word reason is already included in the definition of because, so it can be removed from the sentence. Simply writing, the man went home because he was tired, makes for a more streamlined sentence. Let's examine how sentence structure impacts our writing. Falling into a pattern of repeating the same sentence structure causes readers to lose interest. If every sentence in a paragraph you're reading begins with a variation of the phrase, the author stated, or the author claimed, or the author asserted, you'll quickly find your mind wandering. We'll review several strategies to vary your sentence structure to make your writing more engaging to the reader. Make sure your sentences don't all begin with similar phrases like also, and, in addition to, and so on. Instead, choose a variety of sentence openings and transition words to begin your sentences. Change up your sentence length. Too many short sentences result in choppy writing, while too many long, dense sentences bog down your argument. Aim for a mix of short and long sentences to keep the reader's interest. Vary the subjects of your sentences so they don't all begin with the authors or he or it. Jazz up your word choice. Don't rely on the same tired phrases throughout a paper. Choose strong, powerful words that resonate with the reader. Now let's look at a real snoozer of a paragraph that uses the same sentence structure throughout. It has been asserted that free spay and neuter programs are growing in popularity across the United States. It has been proven that spay and neuter programs can reduce stray cat populations by 30%. Each sentence has the same structure, beginning with it has or it is. I certainly wouldn't be interested in reading that boring passage again. A few simple changes to the structure of the sentences, and voila. Our new sentence makes the same argument, but is much more interesting to read. Free spay and neuter clinics are sweeping the United States in response to claims that they can successfully reduce stray cat populations by as much as 30%. Immediately, it is clear that this example no longer contains phrases with the same repetitive construction. The first two sentences were combined into a compound sentence to keep the passage from sounding choppy. Clichés are overused words and phrases that have lost their meaning. How many times have you read a college paper that began with, in the current political climate, in modern society, or throughout history? These phrases are thrown around so often that they no longer carry weight. They are vague and meaningless and should be avoided. Using clichés makes a writer's argument seem interchangeable with anyone else's. How will you make your writing stand out from the crowd? Instead of relying on clichés, be sure to choose words and phrases that are meaningful, engaging, and fresh. Have you ever noticed that every writer has filler words that sneak their way into their writing? It's similar to a speaker who unknowingly says or like over and over throughout a presentation. A writer may not be aware that she uses absolutely, definitely, first and foremost, due to the fact that, or similar phrases again and again in a paper, causing them to lose their impact. Try reading your draft aloud to identify and remove your filler words. When in doubt, print out a cheat sheet. There are many excellent lists of overused words and phrases to avoid in your writing, such as this one found at smartblogger.com entitled 297 Words and Phrases That Rob Your Writing of All Its Power. Here is a cliched and meaningless opening sentence from a student paper. From the beginning of time, man has been fascinated by astronomy. Just say no to the temptation to use this type of broad, sweeping statement, particularly as the opening to a paper. Instead, provide the reader with specific facts and details about your topic, such as, in 2300 BC, Chinese astronomers made their earliest observations about patterns of celestial bodies. Now this writer has my attention because I know much more about the subject. Metadiscourse is language that we use to indicate the purpose and direction of a text, such as, we will discuss, or the points discussed above. In most cases, metadiscourse, or writing about your writing, is unnecessary and it distracts the reader from the point you are trying to make. It is a good idea to avoid metadiscourse when it refers to the writer's thinking or writing, such as, in this paper I will argue that. Avoid it when it refers to the reader's actions, such as you read the quote below, or when it refers to the writer's degree of certainty, I believe that, or I feel that. Metadiscourse can rob you of a strong argument. If you write, in conclusion, distance learning is superior to face-to-face learning, your argument is hidden behind unnecessary metadiscourse. There is no need to tell the reader that you are about to wrap up your argument. Instead, just do it. In this example, removing the phrase "in conclusion" brings your argument into the spotlight. Distance learning is superior to face-to-face learning. Adjectives are descriptive words that modify nouns. So when we choose weak, generic, or boring adjectives, our sentences suffer. On the other hand, using a variety of specific adjectives can enrich our writing and help to convey our point to the reader. Avoid the temptation to use the words very or really to modify adjectives in your sentences. Instead, choose absolute or ungradable adjectives that have specific meanings. For example, instead of writing very tired, use exhausted. You should also use a variety of adjectives to convey your point. Don't fall into a rut of repeating the same adjectives, such as interesting, again and again throughout your paper. Finally, as Suzanne suggested earlier, a thesaurus can be an excellent resource to help you find adjectives that you wouldn't otherwise have thought of. Let's put these strategies into effect. Here is an example of a sentence using weak adjectives. Child-directed play results in good self-esteem and happy relationships between children. This is a lackluster sentence. Let's try replacing the underlined adjectives with stronger, more descriptive words. Changing good to heightened and happy to vibrant gives the reader more information and makes the sentence more specific. We've covered a lot of strategies today for writing stronger sentences, so let's stroll back through for a quick recap. We suggest the following methods for putting power in your prose. Find the right words. Place information for emphasis. Avoid nominalizations. Replace to be verbs. Avoid redundancy. Vary sentence structure. Say no to cliches. Avoid meta-discourse. And finally, choose strong adjectives. You might like to save this list or jot it down on a sheet of paper to keep it near you when you are writing or revising a paper. The more you get into the habit of employing these strategies, the more they will become a natural part of your writing process, and you'll rest easy that your sentences pack a real punch. Finally, remember that you're welcome to work with tutors at the EWC to strengthen your sentences. We are always happy to help. You can contact us at writingcenter@umuc.edu. And please join us for our next third Thursday workshop on May 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Michelle and David will be discussing strategies for effective communication in the workplace. Are there any questions?
Hi, Anna. It doesn't look like we have any questions at this point.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to working with you.
All right, I want to thank Anna and Suzanne. We just had a comment from David Taylor saying, excellent, thank you both. For everyone who's watching this, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to post them right below the YouTube video, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. And as Anna noted, you can always contact us at writingcenter@umuc.edu. You can also feel free to post a question in our Google Plus community. And as noted, we'll be back again in a month for key to effective workplace communication. Thank you all, and have a great night.
Thank you.